Hey, I'm Aleesha Bake.
I'm Jen Greenfield.
And I'm Jen Tophoney.
VO Booth Besties listen to the questions you have.
We find pros in the know to help you learn.
And connect with our amazing VO community.
Welcome to VO Booth Besties.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to VO Booth Besties. Like our intro said, we're here to help working voice actors get your most important questions answered by industry pros who know. Each week, we'll have a new topic and a guest speaker who is an expert on that topic. Speaking of which, we want to be sure you're all current on all the awesome speakers we have coming up and other exciting opportunities. So we're creating an email distro list. If you want to get on, just head over to boothbesties.com and shoot us a message with your email. A quick bit of housekeeping. In order to stay on topic and get as many of your questions answered as we can, we're actually going to keep hand raising turned off. However, the chat will remain open, and this week, AB will be monitoring that. Now, without further ado, let's meet our guests. Over to you, JT.
Thank you very much, NJ. We're going to start with Paul. Paul Strikwerda is a 40-year veteran of the voiceover industry. Born in the Netherlands, he's worked for Dutch national and international radio, the BBC, and American Public Radio. From his studio in Vermont, he records voiceovers for clients on all continents. Paul is also a voiceover coach and the author of the book, Making Money in Your PJs, Freelancing is for Voiceovers and Other Solopreneurs. You can find him on social media as Nethervoice and on the web at nethervoice.com. Shelley Avellino is a successful top-booking international VO talent. Well, technically Welsh, if we're going to be precise, an international voiceover coach and casting director. She's well known for her upbeat and fun attitude and is sought after vocal VO coach for newbies and veterans alike in the industry. Shelley's voiced thousands of projects over the last decade with clients such as Amazon, Johnson & Johnson, Nestle, Apple, Hilton, BMW, and many more. She specializes in e-learning, corporate, medical narration, audio tours, telephony, and other non-sexy stuff, as she likes to put it. Although she is based out of the USA near San Francisco, she has lived and secured clients all over the world. And because of this success in navigating the intricacies and nuances involved in doing business with other countries, she loves to help VO talent learn how to market themselves to clients outside of the country they live in, so they can expand their client base in their backyard, so to speak. And our third guest this evening is Mr. Tom Antonellis. Tom is a Voice Arts Award nominated VO artist, runs the full gamut. Commercials like Boston Celtics, animation, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, Winning Time on television, Dog House Calls in film, the Stingray audiobook series. He did voice matching for Avengers Endgame, dubbing for Netflix, the ADR for Joe vs. Carol, looping, apps, narrative podcasts, non-narrative podcasts, radio, narration, comedy, improv, legalese, trailers, live event announcing, and yes, Tom even sings. And with his sister Julie Antonellis, he's co-host of the hilarious and heartfelt Voice Artist Award nominated Back Through the Basement podcast. Over to you, NJ.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks everyone in the audience for joining us today. Shelley, so let's just go straight to you. We've got a few questions for you to get us started. As we mentioned in the introduction, Shelley is Welsh. Do you feel that having an accent puts you at a disadvantage in the industry as a whole?
No, actually, I don't. And you know, I've been asked that question many times because, especially being in the US, a lot of US voice actors always say to me, "Oh, you must get so much work here because you've got this accent." And yes and no. I mean, I get a lot of work in e-learning because they think us Brits are smart. Little do they know. But again, I get work all over the world. So actually, no, I don't think it's a hindrance at all. I think no matter what your accent is, if you're a good actor and your personality comes across and you know how to read a script, and more importantly, you know who the audience is culturally as well as geographically, then I think it doesn't really matter. I think people worry about that too much. Paul might say it's something different to that. And yeah, I don't think it's not been a hindrance for me at all. I don't think for a lot of other working talent, although I think a lot of people have this misconception that if you have an accent, say a US accent, for instance, they're not going to want you in Switzerland which is actually untrue. They may want you in Switzerland.
Okay, that's fantastic. So, as a Brit living in the US, do you have an American accent in your arsenal of voices?
That's actually an interesting question too. I personally don't. I could if I really wanted to, I could go to Tom or a lot of the other dialect coaches out there and become quite proficient at an American accent. I can do a little bit. I'm married to an American, so I should be able to. But I actually don't. I want to kind of stick with what I have. And the reason for that is that even if I got great coaching and I picked it up really, really well, I think it really still does depend on who the audience is. It's the same if an American voice talent does a British accent. I know some that do an amazing British accent and they get a lot of work that maybe a natural Brit wouldn't get if the audience is American. And that's because they're used to hearing an American voice do British accents, if that makes any sense. So it depends on the ears. But no, I'm kind of keeping on the Brit side or the Welsh side or the whatever you want to call it, mid-Atlantic side or transatlantic or whatever.
Well, and I like that because this is, certainly just coming from the conference and any time that we've had coaches and casting directors on our show, we keep driving home the same idea that you be you. And
Exactly.
that carries so much more than you trying to put on a voice, put on a character. So I appreciate you saying that.
Oh, for sure.
So what I'd like to talk to you about, you are Dutch by birth, but how many other languages do you speak?
Well, a little bit of English and then some German, a little bit of French. I can understand Italian, and I studied Portuguese for 2 years, but I'm not fluent at it. So I have a little bit of a background in languages, and one of the ways I use that language knowledge is as a wedding officiant. Apart from being a voiceover, I've also married about between 200 and 300 couples, and I married the international couples who came to live in the United States. And even though I don't speak Italian fluently, I know how to pronounce it. So they translated the sermon to me and the ceremony, and then I pretended to do that. But most of my work is in what they call neutral English.
Okay.
My English with this, I would say that our voice is the mirror of our soul, not our eyes, but our voice, because it's kind of this blend of where we've been, our upbringing, our education, our interest, and everything. And so I think that this accent that you hear now is what I use most of the time.
Well, first of all, that was quite profound because I think that is a fabulous way to really, oh my gosh, bring life to your voice because I am also a world traveler and have lived all over. And sometimes people will go, I hear a little Midwest or a little Southern or a little California, and it's nice that you can't quite pinpoint it. But at the same hand, it just lends itself to exactly what you defined it as, is that our voice is a culmination of our life and experiences. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So you said primarily you are securing jobs speaking neutral English. Is that accurate? Just to reiterate.
I have 3 types of jobs. Main deal is neutral English. Secondly is pretending to be an Englishman. And third is my Dutch native language. Because I found out that I cannot fool the British, but I can fool the Americans. So I remember one of the things I did a couple of years ago was when they had a jukebox musical, All You Need Is Love, the Beatles musical, come to Broadway. Of course, tons of British voice actors auditioned, but guess who got the job? I got the part as this crazy Dutchman. And I came in, did the audition. This was in New York, spent a couple of hours with these people. And during that time, nobody had any idea that I was Dutch. But that was before a stroke happened to me. And after my stroke, this was 5 years ago, after my stroke, my accent changed and it became more Dutch. And I don't know why that is. And I can't seem to get the old English back, but I'm trying. But then another one, my very first national commercial in the United States was as a kind of David Attenborough nature type of narration. Yes. It was an IHOP commercial. It's the nature of breakfast. So again, another British accent, but it has to do with the fact that the kids in Holland in Dutch schools learn the Queen's English. We don't learn the American English. We're
Oh, I
raised with the
see.
English British
Yeah.
accent. Yes, so it made it easier.
So I have,
As I'm talking to you, I don't know why this happens, but as I'm talking to you, I'm trying to do a little bit more British
I was just about to
instead of
say, you're
my.
getting a bit more British in there, Paul. I'm
Yeah,
quite liking
funny.
that.
I mean, that happened to me at a conference. We've all came just from VoiceOver Atlanta. And as I was talking to Hugh Edwards, the guy who runs Gave for the Brain and won Voice Awards and stuff like that, I threw in more British. Then I talked to other guys from America. I became a little bit more American. But one thing I'll never do is sound like a true American because I can't do an American accent.
Okay,
They
that was
try
going
to,
to be my next question is, do
yeah.
you have that in your arsenal of voices? Do you have an American where you can say, "Hi, this is Paul Strikwerda"?
No, there's something inside of me because I think it has a lot to do with personal preference, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I am not drawn to the American accent. I can't say I can't do that. That doesn't sound
Me
pleasant to
neither,
me.
Paul. Me
Nasally,
neither.
so I still say I can't do that. I don't say I can't do that anymore. I don't say that with this sort of fake British sophistication, but it's kind of this blend of Dutch and American and English, but it's more British still than it will ever be American. But when I first landed my first agent, which is hysterical, I went to Mike Lemon Casting, who was in Philadelphia. I used to live close to Philadelphia. One of the first things they said is, "Great, we'd like to sign you up for our roster because you sound like nobody else sounds like. You have this indistinguishable accent. We don't know if you're from Northern Europe or we don't really know where you're from, but it's intriguing. So you sound like nobody else in our roster." So that was great. And then the second piece of advice I got was get some accent reduction training, learn how to speak like an American because we can book more jobs. And I tried that a couple of times and it just didn't sit well. It's like I don't like Brussels sprouts, so no matter how many Brussels sprouts you're going to give me, I'm not going to like Brussels sprouts. The same with the
Yeah.
American accent. And so now it's really my bread and butter
All
to have
right.
this. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so hit your little mute button down in the bottom right, and we are now going to go to Tom, who has been so incredibly patient, and we cut him off mid-sentence.
Oh, it's
All
all
right,
good.
Tom, thanks for coming up and joining our panel. You
My
are
pleasure.
the only English-speaking American in our panel, but most people know, and if you don't, you actually coach on accents and dialects. So my
Correct.
first question is, have you found that you yourself are using any of these European. Now, again, we're not doing Latin, we're not doing Spanish right now. We're just kind of talking this European, Brit,
Yeah.
Dutch, German. Are you using European accents as part of your current bookings?
Yes. Quite a bit.
No kidding. Now, are these more for characters, for animation or audiobooks, or are you doing commercial work too with this?
I actually don't often audition for commercials in my native speaking voice, but a great deal of my work will involve some degree of dialect usage, whether it's American dialects other than the natural
Mm-hmm.
general American that you're hearing right now, that is essentially my everyday speaking voice, or the various UK and European dialects and accents that I have command of.
That's interesting.
Quite a
Um,
bit. In fact,
so our friend Nick Redmond, now she actually shared with us, she no longer coaches in accents and I'm still on you, Tom, so you're still with me. That she no longer coaches on accents and dialects because there doesn't seem to be a market for those who can do a variety of accents due to a shift in more localization and inclusion for actors. But it doesn't sound like that seems to be true for you or your business.
no, I have great deal of respect for um, every dialect that isn't my native dialect that I might approximate, but
Mhm.
it and I know that I'm up against people who might have the native sound that I am adopting. But no, I do see that it still comes across my desk quite a bit in the various genres in which I work and book.
And I know that you're still coaching others to do the same, correct?
Yes, indeed, I
Absolutely.
teach 19 different dialects.
Wow. Okay. That's excellent. Uh,
Interestingly, I sat down anticipating a discussion of, and I'll be doing this also with Everett Oliver in the near future. Kind of, I get occasionally I'll get a question mark on somebody's brow why would I need to work on any of this if a move toward authentic casting is so much, and rightly so.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and just throw it out now because we can.
Yeah.
So
I sat down and I wrote benefits of dialect study. I wrote up a sheet. I wanted to sit with this question of, why did I do this? Why I started, and why I continue to study and add to an arsenal that I might not actually ever pull out of the quiver. Certain things, I use a lot. To this day, still video games in otherworldly realms, fantasy games and alien games and Star Wars-esque games are still very much drawn to a Mid-Atlantic sound or even a British sound. So I never want to be out of the loop or out of consideration for, no one on Earth has an authenticity claim to an alien or a fantasy character, or if none of us do, everyone does.
Right.
So there's still going to be, quite a bit of work there. But I actually wrote out a thing, and I actually did a what's it called? A survey among my clients quite some time ago, and I dug it back out. And they wrote down 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 benefits of dialect study that go beyond even just having the dialect to use in one's everyday work. I can share them with you, but I don't know how much time we have for that.
Well, yeah. So hang on a minute. So no, I want to stay with this. So let me pause for a second with you. I want to go to Paul, and I'm going to circle back to you on this exact thing. Okay. So Paul, if you'll unmute yourself. So let's go down this path for a minute, because this is I think it's pretty neat. Do you have thoughts about the trend moving towards regionally authentic reads? Is it a positive shift? Is it not really relevant? I mean, if the actor is properly trained and can pull it off, who cares? Do you have, I know you have thoughts. Come on. It's you. Hello.
Well, I think it's all part of the globalization of our market. And it's become much easier to find people who speak their native tongues now than it used to be. So in the past, when they couldn't find a real native speaker, they had to find someone who could fake it. But I can find anyone with any dialect in any language if you just take the hour online, or if I can't find it myself, I'll ask people that I know, and they'll find a real thing. So why get a surrogate if you can get the real thing? And I think it's this whole move to authenticity. So I've noticed it with my British accent too. I used to get a lot of jobs with my British accent, and I could fool people, but nowadays no more. And why should they, though? There's so many good British speakers, and I think it's really a good trend, because I don't like the fakery stuff. I like to be my authentic self as well. I don't like it when they hire someone from Belgium to pretend to be a Dutchman, because we're two different countries, two different dialects, really. If you're a linguist, it's not a dialect, but it's a different language. But, Flemish, what they speak in some parts of Belgium, is like British English is to American English, and the Dutch being then American English. So yeah, I like truthfulness in life and in accents.
Okay, perfect. So now I'm going to shift to Shelley, and thank you, Paul. You just gave me a big old fat softball. Shelley, do you think it is the actor's responsibility to turn down jobs if they are not represented at the country asked to be voiced?
I do. I think I'm very much like Paul. I do a lot of casting, and I cast for a lot of international accents. I don't say languages. Notice I say accents. And Paul's right. I can find pretty much any accented voice talent out there. Now, whether they're a good accented voice talent is another question, but we can generally find the real thing. And I do think it's down to the actor to be honest. But sometimes, when you want the work and you need the work, sometimes in reality, they're not. So I think it's down to the client also to do their research too.
All right. Well, so that sets me up to come back to you, Tom. because I have asked you about this and I really liked your reply. So I'm going to paraphrase what I remember you saying, and then I, of course, would like for you to expand in your own words. But you said to me that it's not your job to understand where in the process this audition might be coming from. If your agent sent you an audition for something in an Irish accent, there's a chance they've already sent it to all their Irish actors and they weren't a fit. And so now they're coming to you. So can you expand on that?
Yeah, that is one perspective that I often think about. How do we know that it's not already gone to a series of people that they have already turned down that might have ethnic claim to? Irish may not be the best example because I actually am half Irish, and
okay, well, pick something else to make it relevant.
Yeah, but for example, I remember recently, I'll be announcing it tomorrow because the game drops tomorrow, but my IMDb credit is there today, so my NDA is lifted. I was cast in Crime Bosses Rockay City. It's a really cool video game. It's got Michael Madsen and Chuck Norris and Vanilla Ice and a lot of really cool actors in it. Kim Basinger. And they contacted me, a colleague referred me and said, do you do an Italian accent? Now, I am Italian, and so much of me is associated with my Italianness. But the truth is that I actually never grew up hearing any Italian sounds. You have to go not to my parents or grandparents, but to my great-grandparents to have a household that had an Italian accent or the Italian language in it. By the time it got to me, we had just a couple of swear words and a few Antonellisms, you could call it, the type of little things that you say in a household that you don't even know why you say them, but later on you find out it's 2 or 3 generations of a foreign word. And but I am so Italian, and I'm thought of as Italian, and that's why this person recommended me. And I reached out to them and I said, yes, indeed, I do an Italian accent. And they said, do you do Russian too? Because we're trying to get Russian and Italian people. Now, I don't do a Russian accent. I don't do enough of it to claim it as a passable dialect or accent in my toolbox. I don't coach it. So I told them no, they're at the risk of not getting, if they really wanted somebody who could do both, I was eliminating myself. It turns out they did bring me in. And when I went into the session, brought in to do a bunch of grunts, a bunch of soldiers, probably some American soldiers and Italian soldiers, I ended up doing 17 different voices in 11 different dialects across 4 different countries. And I was also given 3 cutscenes. In other words, characters that would actually have a name and have a credit on IMDb. And I believe that was happening in that session. I don't believe that's what they had planned, but I believe that the more they peeled at the onion of me, they realized just how much I could do based on skill. Did I do some in there that aren't aligned with where I grew up or my ethnicity? Yep. But I believe, an actor. They were going, oh my God, what else do we, hey guys, what else can we throw at him, And I was so enriched as an artist in that session, knowing that I was totally providing for them. I wrote down what Paul said about how our voice is a reflection of our life and experiences. And I 100% agree, but I don't think it's a complete reflection, because I know, for example, my voice also reflects my life, my experiences, but also all that I've studied, all that I'm passionate about, my imagination, my creativity, my humor, and every inspiration that I've taken, many of whom are not Italian, Irish, Bostonian, General Americans. So I don't know if that answers your question, or
no, that was brilliant.
It was, and I told you how the clock worked.
No, that's brilliant. You absolutely took it and ran with it, and that's what this is why I was really excited to have an international panel, because you guys are perfectly positioned to offer three very different points of view, as again, the point being, where do accents, dialects, American English fall? How do we all coexist? So JT, you want to take us to our 30-minute mark?
You got it. It looks like we are at the half an hour, and that just flew by. Holy cow. Quick room reset. If you've just joined us, we are VO Booth Besties. Our goal is to help working voice actors get the answers to their questions from the pros who know. Tonight, we're joined by a panel of voice actors who specialize in international sounds, and we're discussing accents in the current industry.
Thank you. Now, before we continue, AB, do we have questions from the chat?
We do have some questions. I actually, there's quite a few conversations going. It's really quite interesting. I want to first ask my own question. There's some discussion about code switching. And I was hoping, Paul, that you could elaborate on what code switching is, because they keep referencing you. So I'm assuming this is something you have discussed.
Can somebody define code switching for me?
Well, that's what I was hoping you could do. All right, somebody else. Tom,
It
is
was
that
actually-
something?
It was an observation somebody made about Paul when he found himself speaking to some Brits at VO Atlanta and kind of drifting into the British sound. And then when he was speaking to Americans, doing that less.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And somebody identified that correctly as code switching. We do it all the time. And code switching isn't just dialectical or accents. It's something you do, like a certain amount of formality amongst some people where you lower your defenses and you're less formal with others. Code switching happens all the time. Everybody does it.
Okay.
Right. Now, thanks for clarifying that. And did the person have a specific question about the code switching?
Just that they were commenting that you were code switching, and it was interesting. I was just curious what that was. I'd never heard the term, so I love it. I love this idea that we can kind of take on different roles and use our voice to do that. Okay, some of the other questions.
Like baby talk. When you talk to a baby, everybody code switches to a baby.
This is true. All right, so this, I believe, is a good question for Shelley, because Shelley is a bit of a nomad. The question is, I want to know if anyone has traveled while working as a voiceover artist. I dream of becoming a digital nomad for a few years, but don't know if this career is suitable for it, given the need for a booth. And while, Shelley, I know you have a home and a booth, I do know you have moved quite a bit, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit.
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, this is probably the one job that you can do that in, as long as you know how to, set up a recording space wherever you are. Obviously that's important. I think, a lot of international clients are used to dealing with voice talent on different time zones. So there's always that you have to think about. You have to think about different cultures when you're recording for different countries. But you can totally do this and travel around. I've done it many times. Also, don't, it depends how long you're going for, but if you're going somewhere just on, say, vacation for a longer time than normal, I know a lot of people take their gear with them. If you do happen to be going internationally, don't be afraid to visit international production companies while you're there. I've been to Asia many times, lived in Asia many times, and have lots of clients over there. And if I'm in the area, I will always go visit as well as record from those places. Use these travels, if you do want to be a nomad, to your advantage and market yourself. But you can totally do this anywhere in the world. You just have to be careful that, if you have got a majority of clients, say, based in the US, and you want to move to Lisbon in Portugal, then you're going to have to be working on different time zones. That's the only thing I'll mention about that, and get paid differently, and all of that kind of stuff. There's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it does bring up some good questions about things like working with agents, and when they have expectations that they send you a script and that you can get it done. I have clients in Germany, and they'll send me a script as I'm going to bed, and I'll do it in the morning and send it to them, but I'm not going to hear back until the next day when I wake up.
Correct. You do have to think about that. You do have to think about that. And is this suitable? Where do my main clients lie? Do I want to change around and work at night? Am I going to be taken off the roster? these are all things and considerations that you have to think about if you want to, live in a different country for a long period of time and still have clients in a different country, the majority of your clients. I've got clients all over the world, and I do work on different time zones all over the world, but you don't want to be, you have to have rest too, right? Otherwise you're gonna burn yourself out. So, but I have very kind of strong, I set up my boundaries beforehand, so I think that's really important too, is to set up your boundaries for your clients, and don't be afraid to say no, and know what your limits are. I think is the best thing to say there if you're going to do
I have
this.
I've got quite a few clients in Germany, and they love the fact that when they go to bed, I have still half a day left. So when
Right.
they wake up in the morning, I've done recording, and they can start working on whatever I recorded for them. So it's
Exactly.
ideal.
It's the
I have a
benefit
couple
too.
of exactly. I use it to my benefit. That's how I advertise myself to the European clients. I've had some friends, fellow colleague, fellow voiceovers, who just spent some time in Bali, off the
Mm.
Indonesian coast, and they took their mobile rig with them, and they had told all their clients what was going to happen, and they had no problem whatsoever. So they were there in paradise, having the time of their life, and they didn't lose one single dollar or euro, nothing at all. They kept doing what they're doing. And that's the great thing about these modern times. I grew up in a time where I had to go to a studio in Philadelphia, New York, wherever it was, and work with somebody and a whole team sometimes. And now I can do everything from home, and technology is advancing. It's getting better and better. So it's ideal, really. If you want to be a nomad, become a voiceover.
In fact, one of my students, I think they were based in Vegas. They've just turned a little part of their. They have a oh my god, the word escapes me. Where they don't have a house anymore. What do they call them in America?
An
The
air
mobile homes. I
an
forget. Thank
airstream
you.
thing, an airstream
Yeah,
thing.
one of
They,
I think
those.
it was
One of
yeah.
those. Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. Airstream, and they have a little studio in there, and they just travel the world, and they record from their Airstream, and it works just fine. How about that?
Lovely. Okay, well, we have a couple more questions. Um, Someone asked, I have actors from all over the world taking part in my narrative podcast. What is the UK or European version of SAG-AFTRA? And I think this might be a question for you, Shelley, because I'm not sure.
Well, I know for a fact in the Netherlands, I'm more familiar with that. They don't have a union. It's everyone for himself or herself, and that's really it. I mean, there's no union, but they have something in the UK, right, Shelley?
Yes, they do. Yeah, yeah, they do have one in the
Equity, is
UK.
it?
Equity, yeah,
Yeah.
it's equity. Equity is very similar to SAG-AFTRA, and I believe if things haven't changed, I think you can be both. So if you're, I'm not with equity, I'm not union, but equity works very similar to SAG-AFTRA, and also other countries out there. In Asia, they have, I forget the name of it. Asia, there's a Hong Kong actors union. It's very different from here, but they do cover some voice actors on there. So I always check countries, see what unions they have, because obviously it'll help you with international rates. So that's a really good place to start if you're looking for international rates too.
Aleesha, I just want to jump in really quick. If you guys are interested, you should go back to our podcast. We had Scott McCarthy on. Actually, he was our second interview, and he is the vice president at one of the VPs of DreamWorks, and he actually is the head of dubbing. Now, what was really interesting is he spoke to this, I mean, to a degree, but what was really encouraging for those of you who are wondering is they only use localization. So all of DreamWorks is all in English. So they only dub into other languages. But because of that, and I think it's phenomenal. They want to support the local actors in their communities. Anyway, to the point is he said they make a point no matter what country it is, they pay the top rates for their actor, like whatever, if they have a union, or like Paul said, maybe it's not a union, but whatever would be the industry standard rate, they pay that top rate, no questions asked, because they want to abide by those countries' rules too. But anyway, so there are things in place, and I think, gosh, ladies, do you remember that they dub in 12 different languages. I can't remember, but it was a lot. So it's encouraging to know that there are other entities out there supporting actors' rates. Okay, that's all.
There
That is a
are, there are,
yeah,
and especially in some of the Asian countries where, they're kind of known for their lower rates. There are unions out there, so don't be afraid to look for them. ABU is one of them, APPU is another one. There's quite a few out there, especially for those countries that don't like to pay usage, shall we say. So don't be afraid to look up acting unions, acting guild unions, and sometimes they're known as something a bit different too. So don't be afraid to kind of play around with your Google search to find them.
absolutely. Great question. Um, I wanted to bring up someone. I sorry that I cannot remember who this was. I think it might have been Casey Clack. They said, "I love any move towards diversity and inclusion, but I do struggle with the way the shift towards the authentic branded accent because I personally am multi-dialectal. Is that how you say that? Dialectal, and I don't feel like any are my one authentic dialect." So can
Or
we
they
speak
all are.
to they all would be, right? So I have,
All of them.
thoughts on that, because, for example, my case is my husband is Hispanic, and he grew up speaking Spanish and English in the home. So he has no detectable dialect in either language. So is authenticity, and this is a discussion more than an opinion, is authenticity more about your heritage, or is it more about how you sound?
I would like to kind of take that on from a casting director point of view. For me, it's sound because that's what the client wants, right? I mean, it's just 90% of the time is what they want. But like Tom said, as a casting director too, I might have gone through all my actors that, sorry, not sound, authenticity, like where they come from, that's what the clients want. But sometimes I've already gone through those actors, right, Tom, and they're not filling the spec. So then I have to go to the actors who have the right sound that may not have the authenticity. So it is, on one day it can be one thing, on another day it can be another, and it makes the casting director's job extremely tough, right? It's really, really tough for us. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I really think that it depends on where the job comes from, like Tom said, what Paul said. It's where your voice comes from. It mirrors all of you, and you don't have one authentic voice. You have it's
Right.
many. You have
I,
many.
I also want to make a distinction between fiction and non-fiction. If something's non-fiction, authenticity is
Yeah,
more vital, I think. But if you are more into the realm of fantasy, the games, the cartoons, where you have more characters,
Yeah.
then it
exactly.
doesn't matter so much because then you want the voice to intrigue you, to captivate you. And if the accent is kind of slightly off or a little bit over the top, I love that. I've spent a lot of time this weekend with a French fellow who lives in the United Kingdom, Stéphane Cornica,
Mm,
and he has an
Okay.
accent, and he speaks so many languages. None of them are, I think, authentic at all because French is
French
his
yeah.
first
Mhm.
language. Yeah, so I can definitely hear that he has kind of this French um, uh, tongue coming through and everything. But whatever he does, as soon as the man opens his mouth, you cannot stop listening to him. It's so intriguing, it's so captivating. And in that case, nonfiction, I can totally accept the inauthenticity because it makes him who he is. But when it comes down to when something has to be credible, when people have to be trustworthy, authenticity, if you don't have authenticity, you've lost your credibility.
Yeah. I'm thinking about one of my clients who is of Indian descent, but is totally a dyed in the wool American, speaks like a general American person.
Yeah.
Extremely gifted audiobook narrator. And she was cast in a book in which the main character was Indian, but just like she does, spoken in a general American dialect. At the same time, there were a couple of like aunts and an uncle with minor presence in the book who were one generation up and would therefore have to have an Indian dialect. And she is culturally Indian, ethnically Indian, lived some time in India, does not sound Indian, And she sought me as a dialect coach, and I told her, I said, it just so happens, normally I would say no. There are so many dialects that and accents. I love to listen to them, but I really think it's inappropriate for me to go after them and learn them. I would never use them. And really, it is along the religious line, like I would never do a Yiddish dialect and the racial line. I would never do the dialects of a person of color. Perhaps with the
Right.
exception of in an audiobook where, I'm the main character and the main character is white, but occasionally there might be somebody who isn't white in the book. But she had, not only she was already cast before she learned about these characters, but she also was kind of between a rock and a hard place. And it just so happens that I can do an Indian dialect. I studied it because it came up in a book, and I really laid into the accuracy of it. I did not want to. I didn't want to apu it, if you know what I mean. And I studied it, and the answer was yes. I could help her. She was so relieved for me to be able to kind of illuminate the techniques of how to click into it. And it was just so wonderful as I unlocked 2 or 3 little techniques with her. She then, it almost like, it was weird. It was like her Indian side could flourish. She needed permission to spend an hour making mistakes. That's what we did. She needed to have a session where she just it wasn't perfect. That's what coaching is. And she needed it. She needed illuminated to her what to do differently from her native sound. And again, these were not major characters in the novel, but they were important, and she wanted to get them right. And I thought it was one of the most satisfying sessions of it I'd ever had, because I really gave her something that she was so uncomfortable that she would not get this right. And yet I was not Indian, never stepped foot in the country, but I felt like I really unlocked something for her. She was so relieved.
That's
I think
great.
as a linguist, that's part of the magic that you do, that you can unravel the characteristics of a certain dialect and teach it even though you don't speak it yourself or you're not a native speaker. What you mentioned earlier was the Apu effect, and I think that referred to Hank Azaria playing Apu on The Simpsons, right? Yeah. And he said he was no longer going to do that.
Yeah.
And that's a big discussion in the Netherlands as well, where we have a population from Suriname, which is next to French Guiana, and it's basically our African American population in the Netherlands. And a lot of white colleagues can do a perfectly well Surinamese accent, but will never do it because now it's considered to be an insult. And in terms of that, times do have changed, because one of my colleagues is very successful, Boots Schouwing. He does an amazing Nelson Mandela, and he's even a better, what's his name? I draw a blank, but a very famous American actor, Morgan Freeman. There he is. He does an amazing Morgan Freeman, and he grew up in South Africa, so he was surrounded by different peoples in different languages and accents, and he still does it because he is just so amazing. But he doesn't let people know that he is just a white, tall Dutch guy. And so I think we are in a new era now of kind of political correctness, where things that were okay in the past are no longer okay. It also has to do with equality, because if we as white people can do an African American accent, no matter how good it sounds, we are taking jobs away from people who should be taking those jobs. We see it in music as well. The role of Othello in Verdi's opera, should it be sung by a white guy? No. If we have an African American opera singer who can do that role, we should cast that person first and foremost.
100%.
So we're part of this whole trend now where things are changing, and I think it's for the better.
Everything's shifting. I think it's for the better. I'm noticing it from my clients. My clients want that international sound now, way more than they want just the white American or white British sound. They want, the Pauls and the Stephans and where are you from? Even myself, I get cast more than British people because I've got this little, are you Welsh? Are you British? You lived in Asia? You've got
a little quirky.
Yeah, a little bit of quirky. There's something going on in there. I'm not quite sure where it is, and I think that's where clients are coming from now, and it's kind of nice, which is why a lot of my students when they come say, "Oh, I've got this weird accent and I don't know where I fit, and do I look for these jobs or do I look?" I said, "Just do you."
Yeah, I just had that conversation with
Yeah.
just so happens a British client, wondering. I've had both. I had an Italian actor with a minor Italian accent, really within striking distance of getting a Gen Am, and he had a real complex about it, and he knows he's got the perfect look for so many American roles that he was turning down because of these last little dominoes that had
Oh,
not
what a
fallen.
shame.
And he's an American. He lives here. He pays taxes here. He's married to an American woman. He has an American kid in an American school. The guy is American. But yeah, he's also Italian, and unlike me, he's got a remnant of his Italian language, and he does have a markable Italian accent if he doesn't control the knob, you know. But I taught him how to click those last few clicks on the knob. So yes, he can go after a New York bad guy or a thug or a doctor that they want to be American. He's got the right look for so many things. Such a good looking guy too. He's such a great on camera actor.
Let me break
And
in here just for a second, Tom. I love what you said, and I just want to tie in something Aaron Pierce said over in the chat. And he was pointing out, and it goes right back to what Paul said at the beginning. Our voice is the mirror of our soul, where we've been, and the blend of our upbringing and everything about us. And Aaron says authenticity is tied to knowledge as well as geographic location. And we saw
Absolutely.
Casey also brought up that she has multiple dialects and she feels uncomfortable performing in them, but what we're getting at here is that she shouldn't, because they are a part of her,
I
and
would
she
wish for
should
her that she shouldn't.
yeah, she should be able to use them. So it's really about what we've learned and where we are, but also still being true to that, um, not crossing some boundaries that we've begun to set healthily in the industry
Absolutely.
with culture, and you guys have brought up some really great points. And
I am authentically half Irish, but without the study, I think accuracy is also important. I am authentically half Irish, but before I learned it, I did not have an Irish dialect. So anyone who knows me knows I have a ridiculously high level of accuracy and precision standards. It's one of my core values for my work. In other words, I'm anal. And I brought to bear that sensitivity on learning the Irish dialect, because not only do I love Irish people, Ireland, and my Irish heritage, I'm authentically Irish before I was accurately Irish, as accurate as I can be through study.
And I
Yep.
think that just want to say one very, very quick thing. A lot of the clients that come to me for international voices, I cast for an e-learning company. So what Paul said, if it was a video game company, we'd be having a very different conversation. But for e-learning, they do want authenticity. But however, it really is a case of sometimes I will throw wild cards in there. I will throw people in there that I think would be able to do this role despite they've asked for a particular accent. I'll throw in something very different. And sometimes a client will go, "Oh, I didn't even think about using a German accent there, even though I've asked for Italian." Wow.
Well, so Shelley, on that
So
same
awesome.
note, we had a casting director on here. We had done a for fun audition for Wendy's, and it was a fantastic experience. However, we had folks in the audience who are authentically from another country submit, and it was interesting because this casting director said Wendy's is an American fast food restaurant. And she wasn't sure, if the client would land on someone who has an accent that it was not general American. So when you're talking about casting and pulling people, but you're talking more internationally, you're not necessarily talking about American, or
Right.
are you? Okay.
I'm talking more international, only because the client wanted an international sound. This company was a worldwide company, not just an American company, and that's really important,
Yeah.
right? I am never ever going to book a political spot in the US, right? It's just not going to happen, right? Because I'm British. So it does depend on who the end client is, right? I knew who the end client was. They were a worldwide company with an international audience, right? So I could do that. I felt that I could do that. Obviously, there are times where I don't, but sometimes just having a sound that's from all over the place is really, really of benefit for you if you're going for work outside of the States, for instance. I think it really, really works in your favor.
And it's funny, Shelley, saying what you just said made me think about writing in my head a political spot where there are 17 voices from all different dialects, and having it be a really wonderful melting pot sort of spot for the right politician who would think to send that kind of inclusive message. So
Right. I
There you
think
go.
that's a good thing.
It's never say no. It could
Right.
happen. So it would make somebody listen, wouldn't it? Put it that way. That's
Right.
my argument.
And I would love to hear
I
Paul, Shelley, and me in a Wendy's spot.
Right.
Oh my
Can you
word.
imagine that?
I
How
will
awesome
send you
that
the
would be.
script.
Yeah.
I'll
That
send
would
the
be
script and I
awesome.
want to hear it back. But we have made it to the top of the hour and I can't believe it's gone so fast. You guys have been amazing. Thank you so much for being with us. But before you go, we like to ask our guests 3 for fun questions, a little James Lipton style. And Shelley will do ladies first.
Uh-oh. Go on then.
Okay, now these are just fun. Our first question is, what singer, band, or composer are you enjoying right now?
Well, I play 8 instruments, and right now, what is on my piano? I can go over to it right now. I am currently playing Chopin right now.
Lovely.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right. Our second question is, if you like podcasts, what podcast have you been listening to lately?
You know, I go in and out of podcasting. So right now I'm not listening to a huge amount of podcasts, but I am listening to audiobooks, and I'm currently listening to the latest Stephen King one. I go in and out of fiction and nonfiction. So that's where I'm at the moment. I don't have a lot of time to do a lot of podcasting, but I do like the VOBB. They're one of my favorites. I go to them quite a lot when I go to podcasting.
Nice. And number 3, what is your favorite dessert?
Oh my gosh, that's so tough. I have so many, but I'm actually not a chocolate person. I'm a citrus person.
Okay.
So I'd say lemon cheesecake all the way.
Wonderful. And
Yeah.
if folks want to connect with you or sign up for coaching, what is the best way for them to do that?
You can get me at 2 places, ShelleyAvellino.com or internationalvocoach.com. And all the socials is just my name, other than Twitter, which is Shelley VO Girl. You can find me, just put me in and I'll pop up.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, guys. This is awesome. Apart from the voice, I don't normally sound like this, by the way. It's like a female Barry White going on here, but you know.
But it works for you.
Oh, why, thanks.
All right, Tom, we're going to hit you up next. We're going to work backwards. So same questions for you. What singer, band, or composer are you enjoying right now?
John Williams.
I'm not familiar. What's the genre?
What? You don't know John Williams?
I don't.
Have you ever heard the score to E.T.?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what Jaws is?
Indiana.
Have you heard Harry
Out of
Potter?
context. We're thinking of like the people who sing, right? John Williams is a composer.
Well, it says no. I did ask composer.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
John Williams, I'm currently listening to, kind of going through his kind of discography in a way.
Gotcha.
I have almost every, of course, he's done almost every Steven Spielberg movie. So I'm kind of going from Sugarland Express through through the most recent, through Fablemans. Right now, I'm on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
I love it. And what podcast, if any, have you been listening to?
Back Through the Basement podcast. I literally was working on it earlier today. But I am enjoying, let me just give you the top 3 in my library here. The Seventh Rule, which is a Star Trek podcast wherein folks associated with Star Trek Deep Space Nine kind of go back through not only Deep Space Nine, but the other
The
iterations of
predecessors?
Star Trek. Yeah.
Okay.
And Untold Tales. Melissa
Love that one.
Schaffner's podcast. I listened to some of that.
Yeah.
I coached her on one of her episodes, which was neat.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, she needed a British.
Cool. And what's your favorite dessert?
I'm going to go definitely also cheesecake. Specifically white chocolate raspberry truffle cheesecake from Cheesecake Factory.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that existed.
I've never met a cheesecake I don't like. Shelley, if we get together, if we're in the same state where it's a Cheesecake Factory run for sure.
I didn't even know that existed. Oh my God, I'm drooling right now. Oh.
White chocolate raspberry. Actually, here, let me give it to you. White chocolate truffle cheese.
Oh gosh. Okay. All right.
Talk about
That's
sharing.
it now.
Sharing in the community. And Tom, where can our folks find you if they would like to connect with you or get coaching?
Yes, there's a coaching tab on my Hub website, which is tomantonellisvo.com. And if you want to go straight there, thickskincreations.com is my production company and coaching website. But I'd like you to visit the Hub first and click over because the Hub is, I'm far more proud of that website. tomantonellisvo.com.
All right. Thanks, Tom. And Paul, we've got the same questions for you. What singer, band, or composer is your favorite right now?
I discovered it lately, and I don't know why it took me so long to find her, but her name is Samara Joy. Has anyone heard of Samara? She's this amazing.
Yes. She just
If you
won.
Yeah, she won an Emmy, I think, didn't she, or something like that?
She did, yeah.
No.
Yes, she says. It's not an Emmy, but well, the equivalent in music.
She's
Anyway,
a jazz
she's a
singer.
young jazz singer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's about 23, 24 years old, but she sounds like she's had a whole life that she's lived already. And she sings these standards, kind of the songs that Ella Fitzgerald or Sarah Vaughan or
Love that.
even or Nina Simone sang, but with such depth and such vitality and such joy. I cannot stop listening to her. She's phenomenal. And I'm a big fan of Apple spatial audio, so I put my AirPods Pro on and I can listen to her all day long. She touches my heartstrings like very few singers do. And so that's her name, Samara Joy.
Lovely.
Or maybe Samara, yeah. So, and the podcast, well, most of the podcasts that I listen to are really radio shows that are repackaged as podcasts. So one of my favorite interview shows is Fresh Air with Terry Gross.
Yes.
I love her interviews and her interviewing style.
Wow.
But I also like the VO Social podcast with Nick Redman. And a lot of Dutch things, because I think as an international voiceover, living in an English-speaking country, I need to make sure that my Dutch really sounds authentic, right? Because I don't speak Dutch normally during the day, so I listen a lot to Dutch things. So I can name a couple, but nobody would know what they're about. But they bring me back home, and that's another thing. You know, I love the sound of my own native language. I don't hear it enough, so podcasts are a bliss. And now that dessert, right? And I'm going to cop out a little bit, but I love a German dessert called Strikwerda Kirschtorte. So that's a Black Forest cake, a gâteau. That's one of my favorites. Yeah, Strikwerda Kirschtorte. I love saying that word. But my all-time favorite is really tiramisu. I love a good tiramisu, you know. See, that's a completely inauthentic Italian accent, but wherever you go,
very on point.
Wherever you go, the tiramisu is different for every restaurant that you go to, right? With a different mix of the different ingredients, and so I always like to be surprised, and I love the name. Ristorante autentico. But you know, do you know what the name tiramisu means?
I don't.
Tom cannot answer because he's half Italian, half Irish, but it means pull me out. It's kind of, at the end of a meal, a long, very beautiful meal with like 5, 6, 7 courses, whatever. The body is processing the food. You get a little bit tired and you need this strong cup of espresso and then something to pull you out of your state of slumber and your state of digestion. And you take a tiramisu to pull you out. That's
funny. Having an Italian husband, I'm going to tell him that. That's going to be very funny.
Yeah, it comes from tirare. It's to pull, huh? Tirare, take me out.
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Well, knowing now, it will taste even more delicious, I think.
For sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Sorry about the microphone. Oh, well, yes. I want to say apologies for not understanding how Clubhouse works and that I had to push a different microphone logo. I now know, and I've become a Clubhouse aficionado, I think. So I'm going to stay on the medium.
Great.
How can you find me? Well, anything. When you type in Nether Voice, and Nether as in Netherlands, and the voice is in voice, of course, turn it into one word, Nether Voice, and nethervoice.com is my website. You can find me on all social media pretty much, but Twitter, I just type in Nether Voice, and you'll find me.
Fantastic. NJ?
Well, thanks again to our guests for joining us, and thanks to all of you in the audience. Our chat was blowing up. I am so just thrilled not only at the turnout but the discussion, because again, like I said at the top of the conversation, I think international voices, and again, we were just kind of barely scratching the surface just from an international European standpoint. We haven't even gotten into other ethnicities, et cetera. So I think this was a great topic, and I appreciate you all hanging with us and for commenting and just being involved. We want to remind everyone that VO Booth Besties has grown to 2 nights a week. So we invite you to join us on Monday and Thursdays, same times. AB?
Oh, yeah. This Thursday, March 30th at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be talking with Law Lapidus and discussing what to know before submitting to an agent. In the meantime, go connect with each of us on LinkedIn and follow us follow VOBB on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you want to hear replays of tonight's episode or any of our previous discussions, you can listen on our podcast. Anywhere you listen to your podcasts and on the podcast page at boothbesties.com. And that wraps it up. Good night, everyone. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to another episode of VO Booth Besties.
Be sure to subscribe to our podcast. Well, pretty much anywhere they're playing podcasts.
And follow us on Instagram and Facebook so we can keep the conversation going.
VO Booth Besties. Yeah, it's a thing.